you guys?
That's correct, yeah.
So you
Go
can
ahead,
see
Eugene.
all of us,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah. Okay, I started
okay.
recording also. Go ahead, Eugene. You can begin.
Okay. Who's opening? I'm so sorry.
You can start with the prayer actually, yeah.
Okay.
Well, hey guys, so yes, I'll open up. So today we're doing not the final nakshatra, but the last nakshatra in the chronological order of Revati. And even though me and Dr. Pai, we covered the beginning 5-6 nakshatras, and then we all came together and started doing these things. So you guys will still see other videos as well, like Ashwini again, Bharani again. But today is the crux of all the, the whole nakshatra cycle. So yeah, so we're going to be starting, Revati nakshatra with the prayer from Lovely E.
Okay. Thank you guys. Such an honor to be here again. Om Hrim Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om Ganganavate Namaha. Vakdevye ch vidmahe Varanchi Patni ch dhimahi Tano Vani Prachodayat. Om Aim Saraswatye Namaha. Om Aim Saraswatye Namaha. Om Aim Saraswatye Namaha.
So I think now it's since we rarely get Kapil, I think it's going to be Kapil ji who will kind of speak on Revati nakshatra. So Kapil ji, over to you now. Yeah.
So we already know like all the key things of Revati nakshatra and the Pashan and all the story. But see, I want to speak from what I have witnessed, especially through transits of moon and just reading people's chart. I think the best way for astrology is not books. Teachers, great, absolutely, but it's when you actually see the chart. That's when you really see how astrology works, because you can hear things like, for example, Moon and Ketu make a person very isolated, or Moon Rahu can give psychological issues, and you will see people's chart and it's not that case. They're normal, they're like highly logical people who are lawyers and IT professionals. So this is where the experience of people's lives is what teaches you. So one thing I've seen with Revati is that, first of all, time dilation, which we know that story, right? They waited in there and it was too late, right? I forgot the name of the daughter and her father. But see, what I've seen, like anytime Moon was transiting Revati nakshatra, not just Pisces, actually Revati is where I came across shows where they were talking about, let's say, for example, anything on Einstein. They were talking about how there's dimensions in this world. Like, you'll see one of those conspiracy shows, alien shows, that there's these dimensions where a person will go for an hour and they will return after 100 years. And there's these portals that has been there. So that's one thing I saw, that there's something with time and anomaly. Like, for example, I've noticed this 3 times. Suddenly I'm like, okay, so I'm like, finished my work. I'm like now relaxing, having my cigar. I'm like, what do I want to watch? So I'll just open up the TV. 3 times I've seen this. I'm like, let me watch Interstellar. I just wanted to watch Interstellar, and I've watched that movie redundantly so many times. And when I'm like, okay, why am I watching this today? And then lo and behold, like Moon either just entered Revati or was in Revati. So I know there's something to do with how you can not just witness time dilation in a fictional way. It is probably also through rituals. You can look into the past, future, or even, take your astral body or causal body to other places. But one of the other big things that I did not see in the actual, the description or the theme of the nakshatra is they have no support. A Revati individual will not get support, especially if they run through the dasha of the planet in Revati. Why? And the way I'm connecting is just simply by looking at people's chart, them emailing me and saying, I have no support, none of this, I'm now alone in this country, what's happening. So then you can see that when the daughter, when she waited for Brahma for an hour, which was already like a whole yug has gone, where men were in short height, she was a tall one. Let's say she was 7-8 feet tall. What happens is that now you are the person. Everybody's now kind of below you. They can't support you. You have to support yourself. So you will see that the Revati person will have to walk on a path where they'll have to do things by themselves. They will not get, because again, also if you look space, which is Pisces, naturally is dark, right? We see the sunlight, we see the blue sky, but if you go to the ether and it's dark, it's like there's no support, there's nothing. It's like you're becoming Brahma itself. And Brahma now has to create something for itself in that zone. So they have to be the one. They should never look for any support. If it comes, you're lucky. But if it doesn't, they have to do things on their own. They have to do their own sadhana to create their world, whether it's their business, whether it's their promotion, going to a different land, any place. Like, even though I know somebody very close to me who came from India to US on their own merits. They came from India, they came from pretty much no money, poverty, and they were here alone. And Revati is very strongly dominating in their chart, and they had to wash dishes, they had to do all these different things, and then they got a scholarship at USC and all that, and then they finally became something big. But they had to be that tall person, the daughter, where everybody's now looking at you for support. And even though you want support, they're looking at you to support them. So they support others. They don't get anything in return, And now, and the other thing I've also seen with the Revati in terms of like careers is dentist. I've seen dentist, and this is also because of the teeth were knocked out, right, by Rudra or Shiva. And so they work on those things. But other than that, every other theme also works out. Love for classical knowledge and literature, love for like poetry, spiritual poetry, and all of that. So of course, all those devotional factors are there. But I just wanted to give what I have seen. So that's my quick 60 cents.
Okay, great, Kapilji. I think it will be Dr. Pai next. Dr. Pai, you can take the lead here.
Yeah, I think Kapil has brought in some very good points. I will start with just giving a little bit introduction about what Revati means. Now, this word Revati comes from the root Sanskrit word which means Revat or Revata. Now, what is Revat? Revat means somebody who has come from a wealthy or descendant from a wealthy family or a rich family, or who has descended straight from the clouds. That is what Revata means. So that is why this nakshatra is being considered to be associated with prosperity, abundance, plentiful. Also, it is about benediction. Okay, so that's why you say this is the wealthy star, because of the association with Revat. Now, this nakshatra, Revat, also is associated with a particular form of a white flower, which is called as the royal jasmine. There are other names also, you would know that as, it is the chameli, it is the mogra, or it is also, you can call it, what is other name? Okay, you can also use narkesar, anything which is a fragrant flower, which usually happens in the autumnal season also. All crops which grow in the autumnal season, which means you can say the pumpkins, the celery, the kale, then you can think about radishes, beetroots, sweet potatoes, all of them are connected to this nakshatra. Okay. Now, this chameli or mogra or kunda also it is called, all kinds of fragrant flowers are associated with this nakshatra. So what I'm saying is this nakshatra has something to do with anything to do with mood boosters, any kind of essential oils which helps you to overcome stress, balancing your hormones, and also it's a natural remedy that you see for depression. And they also say jasmine has been used since time immemorial, even when you go to places where we used to call it for entertainment, people used to go something called as mujras. Mujras also, jasmine was used because it has got libido boosting qualities. So that is the reason this nakshatra is called a Mridhu nakshatra, which is soft, tender, komal also it is called. Now, let's also look at what is Pushan, because he's the deity associated with this nakshatra. Now, one thing that Kapil also mentioned is this nakshatra is connected to 32 stars. The 32 stars can also be associated with the 32 pearly teeth. And that is why you see the association that you see with this nakshatra with Pushan, where his teeth were caked in by Veerabhadra and Mahakali. Okay, this whole episode is called as Daksha Yagna Bada. Daksha Yagna Bada means the first grand sacrifice, fire ritual that was done was Daksha, who was the first person to organize such a fire ritual. So there was a trouble in that fire ritual. Okay, so Veerabhadra and Mahakali. So there is other descriptions which are given in the Puranas. So it was said that Bhaga's eyes were plucked out. Then they also say Agni's hastas, Savitur's hands were chopped off. Bhrigu Rishi's, beard was pulled. Okay, and they also say Chandra was beaten black and blue on the face. Okay, so these are descriptions. So in that they say Pushan is an Aditya. He's the sixth Aditya amongst the 12 Adityas. So what does he represent? See, there are many names for Pushan, and that also explains to you what is Pushan's main merit. And this is something today I want to clarify, because many people who are coming to nakshatras, they believe that it is the grahas which rule the nakshatras. I want to clarify this once and for all. It is not the grahas which rule the nakshatras. It is kind of a blasphemy to say the nakshatras are ruled by the grahas, which means you cannot say Mercury rules this nakshatra. You have to always say it is Pushan Aditya who rules this. Why I'm saying that is, when we move from Vimshotri Dasha to any other Dasha, the planetary lordship is going to change. But the deity, the principal archetype, or what we say the tutelary deity of this presiding deity, they live in the heavens. So always make sure that whenever we talk about nakshatras, we are talking about Swargaloka, which means we are talking about the real heavens. This is where the abode of the Devatas is. But what we are trying to do is we are going into the mid heavens, which is where the solar system is, where we have the Rashi system. And we are trying to associate somebody who's a lord of the lower level, we are trying to associate with the lords of the heavens, which is wrong. Right? So I want to clarify, at the earth level, we have the Bhava Chakra, which is, the Bhugol, we say, the mood, the emotions are attached to the earth. Then at the mid heavens, we have the Rashi Chakra and we have the Navagraha Mandala. So this is ruling the mid heavens. Okay, so definitely you can say Rashi Chakra is ruled by the grahas. But the heavens, what we are talking about, these are the abodes of the divine gods which live in the heavens. So please do not make this, because I've had many people writing to me. I've also had many people saying that there are so many people who associate this with the Graha lords. But when you do use the Vimshotri Dasha, you definitely use these Graha lords to interpret and to understand the events that are panning out. But never say that it's the Grahas which rule the nakshatras. Okay. Now, this nakshatra, the Pushya Aditya, is called as Adantaka. Adantaka means somebody who is without teeth. And it is said that because he has no teeth, he usually eats on a karamba. Karamba means it's kind of a porridge which is ground. When you are sick, in India, there is starchy rice which is made, which is ground and which is fed to people, because they are not able to chew it properly. Okay, because he cannot chew because he doesn't have teeth. Then he's also said his favorite sweet, there is a sweet flour cake which is given to Kushan, and that is usually done during Navaratra as well, which is called as Malpua. Malpua is a sweet flour cake, like a pancake. Okay, it's put in sugary syrup. That is also offered to Kushan. Then Kushan is also called as Agrani. Agrani means who is the foremost, who is glowing, who is rising, who is shining light. And that's why Revati Nakshatra is strongly associated with all kinds of livestock, and it is the agrarian wealth. Agrarian wealth is what you see with the cattle, goats, sheep, and horses. So that is your real wealth. In those times, it was this kind of wealth was what you used to think that was real wealth. So that was the wealth that you see here. That's why he's called as Pushyanti. Pushyanti means the bountiful bestower. He also believes in the benediction. When you worship Pushya, you are trying to attract all kinds of wealth. He is also called as Urvarapati. Urvara means he is also the lord of the fields and the crops. Now, Pushyan Aditya is referred to as he brings the energy, the vitality into all kinds of herbs and crops. In the night, it is the moon which makes it medicinal, Aushadhyapati, but there is Uravapati, means somebody who brings the solar energy that comes into all kinds of fruit juices, vegetables, and all kinds of cereals and grains. They all come from Pushyan. That's why he's called the nourishing form of the sun god, right? Then he is also called as Pashupa. What is Pashupa? He's the guardian of the flock and the herds. He's called also as a Gopala. Gopala means taking care of the cattle, the sheep. That's why he's a shepherd, the divine shepherd. He's the animal keeper of the gods. He's also the nurturer and the protector of all kinds of birds and animals. That's why Pashu Pa is also later on worshipped as Pashupati Nath, which is Shiva. In Nepal, in Kathmandu, he's worshipped as Pashupati Nath. Right? Then he also mitigates the risk that is there with obstacles that come in the path of people who are travelers. See, in those olden times, people used to go through, treacherous paths, and they had to go through forests where there are wild animals, there were dacoits, there were robbers. So they always used to make an offering of Malpua at the base station before they set foot into the forest, because forests where nobody knows, once you go into the forest, you could get lost, you could go into wild animals, or you could have dacoits or thieves stealing you and killing you. So they always used to worship this form of deity, which is Pushyan. Okay, it's a form of Shiva as well, Pashupatinath. So he is the lord of safe travels. And in today's times, I believe, if anybody wants to do some remedies, especially because this nakshatra is associated with cattle and Jala Tattva very strongly. Besides, it is also connected to Akash Tattva, which is ether element. I will come to that later on. But what Brahat Samhita talks about this nakshatra, where Vara Mihira says, this nakshatra is associated with all produce which come from waters, which means it is aquatic products and creatures. That's why one of the symbols of this nakshatra is a fish, right? And then you see conch shell. Revata also means there is a special form of conch shell that you get, and that brings wealth inside your family. It's also used in Vastu Shastra as well. And this form of conch shell, which is turning from the right towards the left, is called as Dakshinavarti Lakshmi Shank. In the south, it is called as Valampuri Shank. So there, bringing this itself is bringing, like you're bringing in Revati Nakshatra's auspiciousness, abundance. So it is Lakshmi Shank. It's a particular form of Shank, which also is used. So conch shells. Then all kinds of, aquatic flowers and creatures. So which means you can say even pearl, coral, Then you can say a lotus flower. Lotus flower is favorite for Lakshmi as well. So you can offer lotus flowers to Lakshmi. Then in Bhavishya Purana, see, there are very few nakshatras in Bhavishya Purana which have been said that you can get victory and success coming from worshipping these lords with specific form of flowers. Okay. Now, the flowers are only very few nakshatras they have said. For example, Kritika nakshatra. The other one is this Revati nakshatra. Revati nakshatra, it says white flowers. So Bhavishya Purana says you should worship Shiva or Pashupa, which means Pushyanaditya, with white flowers. Then this nakshatra is said to also bring in connection with pearls, then traders, travelers, boatmen. Now, in our tradition of Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma, there is a belief system that after we die, there is a boatman, a symbolic boatman who comes and he is ready to ferry across your soul to the other side. And there is a mythical river that we have to go through. And that river is called Vaitirani. So this boatman is Pushyan. He is ready to ferry across all the souls who die. So he's talking about taking you from this birth and again taking you to the other side and bringing you back as well. So he's the ferryman. Okay, so that's why you see Vaitarani river, it says, flows through the southern banks of Yamaloka. So what happens? As soon as your stop comes, either you have to descend in Yamaloka and you should go, or you are taken ahead to Swargaloka. Okay, and so the main guy who ferries you, so he's the captain of the ship. So all boatmen, ferrymen, and all are symbolically connected to this. So Pushyan is somebody who can help you to transmigrate to the other part. Now in the Rig Veda, that's why you see a lot of verses in Rig Veda are given to Pushyan, where they say that he is the return of kind of light. He brings back the light. So it is said Gau. Gau doesn't mean only cows. Gau also means the ray of hope that comes in. And that's why Pushyan in the solar astrology part of things, when you do the Rashi system, Pushyan is associated with Libra, Tula, which means everything to do with your weighing of how much karmas you have accumulated. And that's why Sun gets debilitated in Libra. So debilitation in Libra is a suggestion. It is not that it's weak. It's as though saying that the Sun is kind of dying and there is rebirth that is happening. So Pushyan is the one who actually helps you in your death and rebirth process. And this is very much understood by the process of saying anything that is going through Sandhikal, which means day and night, light and darkness, and then same things when you are changing Sankranti, which means you're moving from one sun transiting from one Rashi to another Rashi is called Sankramana or Sankranti. So these are very important time periods when you worship Pushyan or Pashupatinath. Right? Now, there is a ritual in India. This is usually starts what is called as Deva Shayani Ekadashi, which happens typically in June, July. This year it was on 10th of July. It happens in Ashada month, in the Shukla Paksha, which is the waxing phase of the moon. That's when they say Deva Shayani, which means for 4 months. It's called Chaturmas. 4 months, all the devatas are going to go to sleep. Vishnu goes to sleep. Shayana. Okay. So after 4 months, on 4th of November, he is going to rise up again. So these 4 months, which we say, it starts with Ashada Ekadashi in Shukla Paksha. Then we go to Shravana Masa, Bhadrapada, Ashwinav, then Kartika Masa is when they wake up. So Kartika Ekadashi is when they wake up, when Vishnu wakes up. Now, why I'm saying that this is very important is these 4 months, usually there is no events that happen in India, like marriages are not done, any auspicious events are not done because Vishnu is sleeping. So when he wakes up, it is like Pushyan is coming and energizing because it's called Kartika month. Kartika is when the sun is transiting in Libra. when all the devatas are sleeping, sun is transiting in Gemini sign. That's why it's Ashada. So from the lunar month of Ashada to Kartika, Vishnu is sleeping. That is why this nakshatra lord has been given to Revati, has been given to Pushya, because in solar astrology, in the Rashi based, Pisces is given to Vishnu Aditya. Vishnu is reclining on his bed of the serpent, Ananta Shesha. And there is a very important connection which Kapil has already mentioned. It is the birth of Balarama and Revati, as he mentioned in his story. They go to Brahmaloka. Her father's name was King Kakudmi. King Kakudmi takes his daughter to say, who is the best suitor for my daughter on the earth? Whom can I get her married to? When in Brahmaloka, they were there for a few minutes there. Brahma was in some important meeting. They said, please wait in Brahmaloka. And they gave him an appointment when he walked in. And he said, who is the best guy that I can get married to? He rattles out some names. King Kakudmi, that I would like my daughter to marry. I want your blessings. And Brahma starts giggling and laughing. He said, we are in a different plane altogether. You are in Brahmaloka. In Brahmaloka, even a few minutes you pass here, already there are 27 Chaturyugas have passed. Chaturyugas means totally when you add 27 into 4, 108 yugas have passed on the earth plane. So he said, right now Dwapara Yuga is happening and Vishnu has taken another avatar amongst Dasha avatars, Krishna, and Ananta Shesha, on which he rests. He is also taken an avatar and is Balarama. So please go and get married to Balarama right away. Don't lose time, leave right away. Now, as Kapil mentioned, when so many yugas have passed, the height of Revati must have been very, very tall. She was very broad. So when Kakudmi goes and proposes her to Balarama, who is an incarnation of Ananta Shesha, so Balarama takes his plow. That is it is called as his ayudha, which is his plow. Okay, so he hammers her on the head and she is shortened, her height is shortened. So you might also feel that there is some kind of hammering that you go through in this lifetime. Okay, then there is another thing with this nakshatra that I have also seen is of course, Kapil has already mentioned about the teeth and the dental problems. Then I have seen.
I just wanted to quickly add something to that teeth thing, and I'll let you continue. One thing you will see that some of quite a few UFC fighters and mixed martial artists have Revati. Okay, then you're wondering, like, why is it that these ferocious warriors, fighters, have like planets like Moon and Mars and Revati, and especially like tamasic planets? And then you realize, instead of them being the push-on, they're the ones knocking the teeth of the other person. So that's when it made sense that it's not them receiving.
Yeah.
They're actually knocking the teeth. Now there are also cases you will see where there are even physical domestic abuse, like physical abuse towards a person, because when you look at the planets, you will see that certain planet becomes a giver, one planet is a taker, the other one is a protector, the other one is a nourisher. So once you see that, you will see that theme. So just wanted to quickly add that.
No, that's a wonderful point, Kapil, that you've added, because that is again what it brings me to this nakshatra. It's not only the association that I've seen with the Balrama and Revati. I've done videos many years ago. I found that this nakshatra is also very strongly associated with two other deities, which is Lord Shri Krishna and Jesus Christ. I'll also tell you why. Because if you see some of the things that Jesus Christ is also said to be the shepherd, we are all the sheep, and Krishna is said a Gopala, which means he's a cowherd. right? Just like Pushan. Then you say that in this nakshatra is associated with the timing. It's all about timing. And you're talking about, the time and all anomalies that are there with this nakshatra. So if you see, even in the time period of Jesus, he was called as Yeshu. That was his original name. People in India call him Yeshu Messiah, okay, the prophet. And there is some themes you see with the fish as well. So he said he offered fish and bread. He broke the bread. What is the bread? It's about nourishment. That is one thing. He's called the shepherd. Okay, then you see, he brings in all of these themes about, teaching people. And what we said, Pushan is about the thing of the sun dying in Libra, symbolically, which means it is debilitated and it's resurrected. So if you really see, the whole cross and the symbol of the cross is also associated with nothing but the sun. We say he's the son of God. Who is God? God is like the solar energy, which is the Vedic solar deity, Pushan. So Jesus also died and he was said to be resurrected. So it is something very similar themes that you see with Jesus. And I also want to say there is, some research I was just doing. Nobody can say, about Jesus Christ and what nakshatra, but I feel that he is influenced by this nakshatra for sure. Okay, there is a video that I've also done on this many years ago as well, on how Jesus Christ, people who are worshippers of Jesus are called as Yesu Das as well. Like we have Krishna Das. Similarly, Yeshu Das means Isha. Jesus is like Isha. Anyway, now let's
may I just, with what you and Kapilji are saying, just so I don't forget once, it's very interesting. You guys are hitting some very profound points that I hope the listeners deconstruct and think about in deeper levels, because even what Kapilji was saying about the burden of everything falling on the person, that's a very Christ-like theme, as a matter of fact, taking the cross on the back and sacrificing for everyone else. The other thing is the Sanjeevani Vidya Shukracharya, the resurrection. So I'm going to be speaking at length about Shukra's Ucha point being in this nakshatra, and everything you're saying, Dr. Pai, this great yogi, we could call Jesus in this way, call him a great yogi. He demonstrated this Sanjeevani Vidya, this resurrective power. So that theme is actually running through what you guys were both putting things together. The other thing with time, there's a really almost superficial point I want to bring forward that I've seen so many people with watch collections with Revati. It's very odd. So as soon as Kapilji started with the time thing, association with circular time too, which is just abstract, non-linear, all those kinds of different dimensions, just like Kapilji was saying. But there's also something interesting where I've kind of like noted on the side of the research papers that this many people are either collect watches, fix watches, like old watches, things like that. So something with this timelessness, which will, in time, this construct of time, which we'll all talk about, I'm sure, more in our own ways. But I just wanted to bring that point forward of the bearing the burden. That's a very big, you guys are connecting on that point. It's actually a very, as a theme that's running through.
No, I think that's a very good point that you mentioned. And I also wanted to say, especially Revati is connected to a form of Lakshmi, who's called as Dhanya Lakshmi. Dhanya Lakshmi, when you have to see a combination in a chart, if you see a combination of Moon and Venus coming together, that is Dhanya Lakshmi. And it is obviously, I know Evji probably will be touching on these points, where Venus is Lakshmi and Venus gets exalted in this sign at 27 degrees in the last pada, which is the Moksha pada. This nakshatra is about moksha. It's a Sattvic nakshatra. And I told you it is connected to everything which is produce of the water products, which means lotus flowers, pearls, gems, ornaments, all of this which is talked about, it's all about Lakshmi. So Moon and Venus will play a very important role when it comes into this nakshatra.
Well, as
That's-
you're saying about wealth, Dr. Paiji, this is because in this material world, how does one get freedom? How does one get moksha? How does one experience that freedom? Because there's, moksha, you guys often hear me speak about the fact that we shouldn't be drawing these big lines that this is spiritual and this is material. I think that's really deconstructive to our understanding of of life. It's one of the ways that political versions of monotheism has kept us very separated, like this God's in a sky, damning you or blessing you when you're a good little boy or a bad little boy. This kind of thought structure is keeping us very divided from nature and from God being right here. Whatever that thing of God is right here in every cell, that intelligence. So if moksha, the infinite moksha, which everyone's referring to, which really can't be comprehended through the intellect, there's got to be a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of a shadow of that moksha, little forms of freedom everywhere, right? And we're all seeking that release. We're all seeking that, whether you're seeking spiritually, whether you're seeking materially, everyone's looking for actually the wine that is in Revati. And so on a very minuscule level, you could say like just the basic wealth, like money, having all that money where you can do anything in the world, that is a version of freedom. And so that's why there's where this Lakshmi comes into moksha in this way, in this very like material way. The more wealth a person has on this loka, for better or for worse. Not many people handle power great, but you can't judge it. You don't know what it is. There's a reason why that person may have all this spiritual thought and material thought. I want to just dissolve. So it is actually literally a form of Lakshmi. But it gives freedom. That's what we're really seeing. That's why the fourth house starts off the moksha houses. The fourth house is a major wealth giving house. And this is one of the wealth giving nakshatras. It's one of the big ones. Yeah.
That's very true. And then one more point, Evji, I wanted to add here. And this is a karmic life lesson for Revati Nakshatra. The karmic life lesson is they find all divine ways of making money. That's why it's about creating wealth. But that whole wealth creation itself is a chakra vyuha for them. Why I'm saying it is going to take you deeper and deeper, deeper and deeper into the center of the power center and making money. And that is why this nakshatra is said to be associated with Abhimanyu. He said it's the birth star. Okay, Abhimanyu knew how to get into the chakra vyuha, but he didn't know how to come out. That means we all spend a lot of our time in creating wealth for ourselves and going deeper into this materialistic realm, but we need Lakshmi. Laksha means aim, goal. If you make dhan, our wealth is our laksha, then we have only Dhana Lakshmi with us. But there are Ashta Lakshmis. What about the other 7 Lakshmis? There is Vijaya Lakshmi, there is Adi Lakshmi, there is Vidya Lakshmi, there is Santana Lakshmi, there is Gaja Lakshmi, Dhairya Lakshmi, courage. We are forgetting about all the other forms of Lakshmi. We are only made the wealth, Dhana Lakshmi as our goal. So Abhimanyu is said to have born in this star. Now, as per some traditions and some classics also, and especially in the southern part of India. Now, this might surprise all of you. This is also said to be the birth star of Shani Maharaj. Shani is being said to be born in such an auspicious Mradhu Nakshatra, Satvik Nakshatra, and it's about Chit Samadhi Krate. This is Venus Shukra is said to be Chit Samadhi Krate. So this is like giving you Samadhi. This nakshatra is taking you not into moksha, but it is taking you in the path of moksha. Maybe moksha you can get it in probably in future lifetimes, we don't know. But at least if you set the ball rolling in the path of going towards moksha, maybe in 2 lifetimes, 5 lifetimes, 10 lifetimes, 15 lifetimes, you will probably reach that goal, that destination. But nobody can say that when we'll reach the destination. but we have to look at the means. That is one thing. Then there is another deity which is associated with this nakshatra, which everybody has forgotten, and this is the main deity who can give you the resolution for this nakshatra, and that is also his birth star. So this deity's name is called as Ranganatha Swami. Okay, Ranganatha Swami, there is a temple in the southern part of India which was built by the Indian kings. It is called as Sri Rangam. Sri Rangam is the largest, temple or largest place of worship on this planet, because it is spread. See, this is the functioning temple. The largest place of worship on this planet, which is non-functional, is Angkor Wat in Cambodia. That's huge, that's massive, but that is not functioning. The largest functioning is Sri Rangam, Sri Ranganatha Swami. Ranga means colors. Who is associated with colors? Shukra. See, there are guardians of light and there are guardians of sound. Angirasa Rishi, who is Brahaspati's father, he is the guardian or the Sapta Rishi of the sound. That's why Mantra Siddhi, Vak Siddhi is all associated with Jupiter. But guardians of light is Bhrigu Rishi and his clan. Shukra is guardian of light, but he gives you color. That is why Shukra is associated with everything which is luxury. Why we are appreciating color. Otherwise, if you are like animals, we would see everything in black, white, and gray. So we have our cornea able to, appreciate beauty. Appreciation of beauty comes from the colors that we see. If everything was black and white, there is no appreciation. That's why Shukra is said to be associated with luxury, because he gives you the ability, Ranganatha Swami gives you the ability to appreciate. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. This is where this nakshatra is giving you that ability to enjoy life. You might have even, a $10 in your account, but appreciating that will give you that you are wealthy. It's not about real wealth in the bank account. That's why I want to say this nakshatra is also called as Antya. That's the name which is given, that this nakshatra, Revati, was also called as Antya, which means it is the last one. This is your final pit stop. Of course, you will go back on the track, but this is a pit stop for refueling and you go back again. And this nakshatra is also, people have forgotten, it's called Nidra. And Brahma is in Yoga Nidra and he's chanting all the 4, Vedas. So sometimes in silence, if you be in silence and Mauna Vrata, you will be able to tap into this nakshatra much better. Mauna Vrata. That's why, Shukra will help you in achieving that. Anyway, so, I think these are some of the points. One more point, final point I want to mention is the association with the elephant, which is a female elephant. This is associated with this. Okay. Now, if you see elephant is one animal which is associated with 2 deities in, the Hindu pantheon gods. One is Brahaspati. Brahaspati sits on an elephant. That shows, it's the largest land animal. That shows his knowledge, his source of information, enormous. And the other one is Indra. He sits on the Airavat. That shows his power and fame and recognition. So this is also associated with that. And finally, I want to say, the area that I feel this is associated with is Vishnu, especially in the form of Narayan. See, when people go through sudden ailments and akala mrityu, we were just before we started recording, Kapil was mentioning that, there are so many people who are dying at a very young age in the gym. They're going there and, people are dying at the age of 40, 42. So many in the last 3 months, he was saying there are 4 or 5 people that we know in India, young people dying, akal mrityu, we say. Now, why is this happening? That's a different topic. We will not discuss that. But this nakshatra, when somebody dies, when moon is transiting this nakshatra, it's called a Panchaka nakshatra. Panchaka Nakshatra and Revati, remember, with all the other auspicious things I've said, it is a Samhara Nakshatra, Laya Nakshatra, which means it's a Shiva's Nakshatra. Okay, it falls in the category of the three Murti of Shiva. So the last two padas, even though we talk about, said Shukra is exalted, in the tradition it is called as Duritamsha Pada, the last two padas. Duritamsha means that is where you have to go through what we say, in even Christianity and other traditions, we talk about the final judgment. So Revati is the final judgment. And your final judgment is not done by God or Yama or anybody. In the spiritual tradition, they say it is you yourself as a soul is judging your life in your physical karma body. So you are passing the judgment because you are seeing your life and you're unbiased. You are now attachment with your physical body. Your physical body is over. So Shukra is helping you in that process of identifying your mistake, and imagine your own soul is giving you the verdict saying where this person has to go, this soul has to go. So it's very, for a deep spiritualist, it's a mesmerizing thing. There is no God who's standing there and it's not your final judgment. So this nakshatra, the last two padas are Duritamsha padas. And people who go through these four, the last 4.5 nakshatras, I would say, the two padas which fall in of Dhanishta in Aquarius, the 11th zodiac sign, Kumbha, that is the flowing water, and then the two fish. The two fish, they're swimming, in opposite directions, which means it is showing you a cyclical process of birth and rebirth. These two nakshatras are associated with Akasha Tattva. And who is the deity who controls Akasha Tattva? It is Narayan, Vishnu, Mahavishnu. So when somebody has Akala Mrityu, which means because of untimely death, because of suicide, dying in a road accident, or people who are dying out of, some out of age with some disease or an ailment after suffering, chronic ailment, then special prayers have been done for such people. And there is also, it is proposed that Garuda Puran is also read to them. Also, they say they have to get Narayan Bali, because he is the one who gives you liberation from your physical attachments and being here on the earth plane. He helps you to release that soul and helps you to go. So Narayan Bali. So Lord Vishnu is the main go-to person for this nakshatra, and for any nakshatras which are associated in Kumbha and Meena, you see Shiva and Vishnu avatars will help you in transcending that. Okay, so I think these were some of my points. One last point I want to say, this nakshatra is associated with all foods which are said to be superfoods, which have been declared by WHO. One such superfood is called as moringa. Moringa is what we call in India as drumsticks. This is a superfood, and many people in southern India, usually we call them, from Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, or Karnataka, Kerala. These are places where sambar is usually used more, and in sambar they put drumsticks. If you see, you go to the secretariat, in India, I don't know now the trend, but before it was all these tambrams, brilliant people eating sambar. They don't eat any non-veg, vegetarian. They go and, they are the IAS officers, IPS officers, they are the secretariat, they run the whole country. The bureaucrats are all the moringa eaters. I'm not talking about anything with your food habits or anything, but what I've seen is moringa, because you are fed moringa all the, from your young age. Moringa grows very commonly in every backyard in South India. And sambar is their favorite thing. So very good with mathematics, very good with chess, playing chess, chaturanga, we say. So playing that, these are very good people who can logically analyze things. They're sequential, logical, they abide by the rules. So there is a connection with Revati Nakshatra with malnourishment and malnutrition. If we have to remove then use Revati, because Pushan is the lord of nourishment, nurturing, energy, and giving you vitality. So anybody who does a lot of work with related to these things, I think it's going to help them. One final point I want to make is this nakshatra is all about following the cosmic laws and regulations. Next to Varuna, it is Pushan who rules the department. Varuna is the king who, his way of trying to explain to people is brute force method. But Pushan is very nurturing, negotiating, counseling, advising. That is how he tries to resolve the problems that are there. So Pushan is very particular about following the road rules and regulation, because he's about safety of travelers. So that's why I see people who are breakers of road rules. I see Revati Nakshatra, if there is malefic influence, then these people are ones who get the tickets, the speeding tickets, the most, jumping traffic lights, accidents, and things can happen. So you have to abide by the rules of the land. And finally, I keep saying finally, but I want to end this by saying these people are animal lovers. So people who are pet lovers, people who are with animal husbandry, veterinary medicine, hospice workers, emergency response services. I would also say people who work for orphanages, old age homes. This is all your pending karmas that is associated with this nakshatra. Okay, so I think that's a few of the points that I wanted to make related to this nakshatra. So thank you guys for having me. I think EFG wants to go next. So EFG, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Paiji. Usually I have more time. I'm getting ready to go to India, interestingly enough, on the 28th, really, really early morning. So thank you. I might have to not stay the whole time. I hope I can. I will try. But yeah, many good points by both you and Kapilji so far. I really do hope. There were so many things that I was thinking. I was like, if someone contemplated some of the things that you guys were saying from various angles, you could actually put a lot together about this nakshatra from a spiritual perspective as well as a material perspective. I'm sitting here with a form of Mahadeva. I don't know what you're seeing. I don't know if any of you can see this form. But the classical form of Nataraj, Lord Shiva and his Nataraj, Lord of Dance, you could say, that most people see is something called Ananda Tandava Shiva. It's the first form. He's standing on one foot. It's his first pose. And this is the final one behind me. It's called Moksha Tandava. Sometimes it's actually associated with Ganga as well. But let's just stick with the simplicity. It's called the Moksha Tandav. And whereas the first form, he's Ananda Tandava, standing on, or performing the Ananda Tandava, standing on one foot, he's ending here in a nearly impossible posture, where both feet, actually, I'll just let you see, both feet are on the top, and he's supporting himself with one hand. And the back is bent in a nearly impossible way. Okay, so this is an interesting thing to enter this nakshatra with, is backwards, upside down. And you're going to see a lot of many abstract concepts coming into this nakshatra. Even though, to Dr. Paiji's point, which is very true, many times these people are having to follow very very regulated rules on the outside of their life, like supporting a family. And I'm going to get to this, but I used to call it the nurses nakshatra. I saw so many nurses, so many emergency room practice, people in emergency rooms, so many people, driving ambulances and all this, which it has a reason. But a lot of people that do have to follow these very regimented rules. However, inside of this nakshatra is something else. So the desire for freedom is so intense. It's so intense. Now, this can manifest in various ways. It can manifest in desire for wealth and desire for whatever someone is feeling freedom is. This can also result in addiction, okay? So Pisces Meena Rashi is known for that, for people looking for escape from the pressures of life. Really what it is the pressures of the mind. The intellect, Buddha is said to be Nietzsche and Meena Rashi, not this nakshatra, but in Meena Rashi. And you guys know me, I'm not crazy about this Nietzsche Ucha stuff in the way that it's usually practiced. But I do think in some way it has a value. The rishis were perhaps telling a story about the book of life. So looking for the escape, the key word, from the pressures of ordinary life, of the rules, regulations, all of this, looking for that freedom, that escape. Is it going to be in a glass of whiskey? Is it going to be through earning so much wealth that you don't have to be subjected to someone else's control? Is it going to be through sensuality of some sort? Is it going to be through luxury items, which Dr. Paiji so wonderfully said, this is a common nakshatra dealing with luxury items. Or is it going to be through spiritual pursuits? Or is it going to be through something else? This is a very common nakshatra. Now, I know people associate serial killers with the Bhadrapadas, but you're going to see a very low number. When you start actually doing it statistically, you will see a lot of Revati. Okay? You actually will see Jeffrey Dahmer Revati moon. Now, granted, it was conjunct Mangal in Uttarabhadra, but it's Revati moon. He's born into the dasha that wakes up a Revati moon. Albert Fish. I mean, I could go down a list. Revati is looking for escape of the normal reality in some way. Okay, so it can seem very put together in the world, but you have to really look at what they're looking for. So this makes this nakshatra very interesting because it is, I'm going to, of course, take us in a turn, which is the way that I'm longing for freedom, perhaps, which is we are going to look at someone's chart with Revati. But briefly, I want to mention two things that, once again, I always pray that all of you are protected from my ignorance. Whatever ignorance I have, please be shielded from it. I only hope to provoke your intelligence. Okay, so please think about what I say. You don't ever have to accept it as true. But I hope it stimulates curiosity and that you don't just reject it. Look into it first, and then you can throw it in the trash if you want, if it doesn't work for you. So this is where one of the Gandanta points is, and each one of the Gandanta points are a negotiation or a power dynamic with some major feature of life. Okay, so each one of these Gandanta points, and they should never be seen to be negative, they are points of great potential. Wherever there's a big knot of energy, there's tremendous Shakti, guys. Tremendous Shakti. More Shakti is in poison than it is in something like, dal and rice. Okay, more Shakti is in poison. That's why it kills you, or it kills most people. So the alchemy of digesting poison requires a certain kind of intensity, a certain kind of understanding, a certain kind of relationship with Shakti, let's say. So these Gandanta points, even though they're often so vilified and you hear all these bad, I mean, please let's steer away from that completely. Just like being born on an eclipse, all of these things give tremendous potential because the Shakti that's knotted up in them is potent. And whenever you get a tight, wound up ball of energy anyway, if you're having to undo something, you're going to release energy. Whenever you split something, there's a release of power, of Shakti. Okay, so these Gandanta points in some way are negotiations between two things that humans notoriously struggle with, but yet really fight to keep or fight to understand it. We're obsessed with those things in the Gandanta points, actually, for a deeper reason, So if you notice in the Vimshottari Dasha, both Ketu and Mercury are going to close that point. Okay, you're going to have Mercury with the, with the Ashlesha, Jeshta, Revati, and Ketu with the Magha, Mula, and Ashwini. So Revati, interestingly enough, if you think of natural 12th house, natural Meena Rashi, this is institutions, hospitals, all of this. Revati is in some way like the Pushan or the guide across the river, the one who takes you across is the person who's perhaps working hospice care, nursing. This is the nurses, this is the hospital, this is all the care at the end of your life. And this is emergency rooms, all of that. You could even say mental, places where people go for their mental healing. They're supposed to be healing there. We could argue 2 points, but that's what it's supposed to be for. Prisons, facilities like that. And so all the caregivers working in this have a big connection to Revati. This is also Thanatos, to Dr. Paiji's point. Thanatos, he was talking about the ferryman in Greece, but Thanatos in Greek philosophy, for lack of a better word, is the one who actually comes to take the prana out of the body. Yama, or Hades, sends this grim reaper, the image of the grim reaper. He takes the prana shakti out of the body and escorts it across the river, you could say. So this is where the Grim Reaper is standing over with the big sickle. Okay, so you've got the facilities where people pass away and the caregivers there. And then you've got the next nakshatra Ashwini. So this Gandanta is the emergency room doctor, the one who may be able to save your life. This is where fate is really decided. And then the next nakshatra over is Bharani, okay, guys? So you can kind of see this is the death process. This Revati, Ashwini, Bharani is a death process. Shukra always follows Ketu in the Vimshottari system. There's always a resurrection of energy there, rebirth. Always following Ketu, the one that closes, okay? So the Vimshottari Dasha is very deep to study. From very many angles. And so if you kind of meditate on, if you just take a minute to look at this, you're dealing with the power politics of death and life in this Gandanta. Is actually the physical death. You guys were talking about a kala mrityu, the omen of that even before starting this. A kala mrityu, okay? So the power politics of this body being limited. Are you the body? This is the big question. Am I just the body? Revati is that which is to take you to the potential formlessness. So this is an interesting Gandanta point to meditate on because it can make really profound meditators, saints, things like that. It can also make people be so in tune with the intensity of life that they are looking for ways to completely escape. Okay, so this is the nakshatra in some way. It might be so burdened in its family responsibilities or whatever it is. In some way internally, there is going to awaken a need to escape the current situation. And this is nothing but a replica of that life and death. And look, Kapilji is caring for an animal. It's perfect, Revati. So
Yeah, he had. I found a tick on him just now, so I was taking a tick out of him. So
yep, see, there you go.
Yeah.
Caring, he's the doctor right now. He's the
Yeah.
nurse.
Exactly.
So literally this nakshatra has this, I would really encourage all of you to meditate on, contemplate at least the urgency of that point of life and death that really is driving everything in this world, like people trying to protect themselves and conceal themselves from the elements and illness and all these things. It all comes from this hidden fear of death. It's just sitting there in all of us. Sometimes it even pushes the procreative drive when someone has like an addiction to and say sex addiction, things like that. A lot, sometimes it can, the little root core of that can be some kind of fear. Okay. It can actually be fear that's driving that. Sometimes it's just pure sensuality and enjoyment. Other times it's other things. Now, Shani Dev being born here, the boon he asked for was to be the Lord of fear, to make all beings tremble. So it's very fascinating, this connection. Even Dr. Paiji said that Lankapati Ravana was born under Revati in the south. That's what they say. He's, what is he, Revati Jatam? He's born under Revati. So I know in the north, I think it's more common to say he's born under Mula. At least that's what I've heard. But it's interesting to contemplate this. So Revati is nourishing it as it is, as gentle as it is, and it is a Mridu Nakshatra, all of that. It does deal with this critical facing of mortality. Now, Shukracharya or Shukra is said to be Ucha here. And this is, as Dr. Paiji said, it's very sattvic, it's triple sattva guna. And it's, in this case, it's very fascinating because if you look at Shukra and you study his stories, and I've always said this, he's not passive. He's not passive. He's kind of the guy that you don't want on your bad side. Okay, his vengeance. He's known for his very extreme focus in tapasya, one-pointed focus. And most of this in the stories, I don't know if it's been twisted politically. This is the hard thing to know because the victor always writes the story. So we really don't know this whole thing with the Devatas and the Asuras and all of this. I really hesitate to say one's good and one's bad. And this stuff, I do not like a lot of this. I wonder sometimes how this has been spun. Okay. But just to think about it the way we know it. Shukra, he hangs upside down. Okay, the upside down Shiva. Now he hangs upside down inhaling smoke. This is, not only does the planet Venus, the actual planet, it's humid and it has reverse poles, okay, literally. Not only that, but there's yogic practices in the Yoga Shastra that deal with the upside down asanas. Okay. And in order to really become a mystic or an adept on the path in Sufi traditions or mystic traditions, you have to go upside down. You have to reverse your view of, let's say, reality, of linear thought, of rationality. Some of these people appear mad. These people with supernatural abilities, like Sandeep Ji, you were at the conference and I was talking a lot about this, these supernatural abilities. So there is this supernatural potential, let's say, in Revati. And that's even why it gives siddhi or attainment in the material world of some sort, whether it's beauty, whether it's luxury, whether it's wealth, whatever it is. Because it's giving some extraordinary attainment. So Shukra has something to do with this ability to attain union with something extraordinary. because Shukra is one of the Jnana Karakas, we should pay attention to that. There's 3 Jnana Karakas out of the Grahas: Budh, Brahaspati, and Shukracharya. They're all different ways of gaining Jnana, knowledge. Now, Shukra specifically deals with gaining knowledge through union, through becoming. So in the conference I was speaking, just not to be redundant for those of you who are there, but it's important because the kind of knowledge Shukra gains is critical. It is the real form of knowledge. Until you become something, it's not yours. It's not gyan. It's not knowledge. Just because you read it, it does not belong to you. So until you eat food and that food becomes one with you, you don't know what it is to eat food. You could read all the books in the world. Little Mercury could educate you through information, in telling you what, this food tastes like and that food tastes like and what color it is. And sure, you would have information, but in the end, you're going to have to eat the food. That's how you know what the food tastes like. That's how you gain the knowledge of the food. So it works that way, even being with a lover. How do you know what it's like to be with a lover? You can philosophize about it. Even Adi Shankaracharya had to go into the body of someone who had been with a lover in a certain famous story to explain that, to understand. Anyway, so you can look up the story, but he had to have that memory of what that was. He had to have that experience. Because as a brahmachari, what does he know? And if he can even admit that, now what kind of humility should we have when we haven't experienced something? How do we know? So Shukra represents that one pointed focus on, that desire, I should say that desire for union so intensely you're willing to die for it. And when you see the lives of mystics, there's these mystics that have that attitude. Now, Revati embodies this kind of mystic. They're not always the religious type. They're not always the one that is, they may be a little drunk, let's say. Now, this brings me to another point with Shukra's Ucha point being here. The Brigu lineage. And where does Brigu get his massage by Lord Vishnu in the famous story? The feet. Okay. He's going to curse Vishnu in a fit of rage. Arrogance, actually. And his last remaining arrogance was in his feet, in the path that he had tread, in his drunkenness of his attainment. The final bit of arrogance is at the end of your path. And if you look, we're always bowing to the master's feet, to the guru's feet, to the Devata's feet, the Devi's feet, the famous Ma Tara's feet in Tara Pit. You see these beautiful feet that everyone shows. And she is the one that takes across the ocean, actually. She is the Mahavidya that takes one across the ocean of samsara, of suffering, and liberates, drowns you in the ocean of formlessness. So this mystery of formlessness exists here. And Shukra being Nietzsche, many of you heard me say this so many times, I won't go into detail with it, but the Chitra point of Nietzsche is nothing but being debilitated in form. So-called debilitation. We're all debilitated Shukra. All of us are. It's not, oh, this person has debilitated Shukra. All of us are in form. Shukra, the feet. He's Ucha in the feet because Shukra is transport. Shukra rules cars, and in Jyotish, classic Jyotish, horses, transport, even the reproductive fluid that transports the genetic code. Okay, so Shukra is always associated with transport. Look at Parsurama. Okay, he had this, I don't know if many of you know this, but he had the siddhi or the attainment to move between any world at lightning, speed of thought. So he could go to any world. Okay, so there's 2 powers here, siddhis, attainments. There's Shukracharya Sanjeevani Vidya, which is the power to resurrect. And that's a very deep contemplation in itself. The power to resurrect the dead, which is probably birth as well. So you think of this Gandanta point again, culminating in the energy of Bharani, which is the uterus and being reborn, death and life. Once again, everything in this area, those 3 nakshatras, is all death and life. So, so there's the power of resurrection, which does happen through rebirth. A natural occurrence of Sanjeevani Vidya is nothing but birth. Then there's the what we consider the supernatural side of that, which also exists, which is nothing but part of nature. But then you also have this ability to move between worlds, non-linear, abstract, move between time travel, all of those concepts, okay? So Parsurama had that ability. It's interesting. And for any of you with Revati, you might find Yoga Vashisht an interesting read, okay? Now, for those of you who are more bhakta oriented, it might not be your favorite book. I'm pretty fluid. For me, like most of you probably consider me very devoted, which would probably be my first attribute, but I actually rather enjoyed, you know, especially in the past, many of those kinds of reads, those books. And Yoga Vashisht is interesting. It's a lot to digest, but there's a quality to it that I would say is Revati, as is quite Revati. And the concepts I'm trying to embrace here with Revati is that as much as it deals with a linear function, it's actually deconstructing form and deconstructing architecture. So it is that final taking out of the breath and releasing you into the ocean, whatever that ocean is. It is the actual mystic's wine that the Sufis speak about. So anyway, I wanted to show you guys just before I close. I'm going to share a few things on my screen. I wanted to show you one way to use the nakshatras I don't think I've ever done this, and I feel like what Dr. Paiji was saying. Okay, I don't know what you guys can see and what you can't see. You should be
You
able
can
to
see
see.
your entire screen. Yes. Yeah.
You can see my entire screen,
Yeah.
or
You can just maximize that window. Then we can see that window. Whatever you want to maximize.
okay. I have wanted a few things up here.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Can you see the chart? I'm
Yeah.
just making.
Yeah. I can see everything
And
on your screen actually.
you can
Yeah.
see the rishi or the
Yeah.
sant here.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
His name is Tajuddin Baba. Okay, Tajuddin Baba. Okay, and I wanted to show one way to use the nakshatra lords, and this one has a Revati example, because to Dr. Paiji's point, yeah, these are not the rulers of the nakshatras. And I know the Pi team, we've been saying this for a long time. But also, I want to kind of gently confront the over-reliance of Rashis to interpret Vimshottari Dasha, because it's not a Rashi Dasha. It's not. And I feel this whole time we've been doing nakshatra videos, perhaps I've never shown this. And so it's just a small thing. And there's a reason why the rishis assigned dashapatis. So I'm just going to strictly rely on the dashapati and show you a few events in this person's life. But this is an example of, this is just a website. If any of you want to read about his life, this is in Hindi, but I think it has a translate thing. I'm not sure. You can find other things. I just thought this one was better. This achigyan.com. It actually is like a really detailed biography for those of you who can read Hindi. Then the other, like the Wikipedia page, is okay. It's okay, but like more of his stories are here. So this man was known. We'll just take a look at him for a minute. He was known for naturally occurring supernatural events. meaning he was not just working miracles to improve, to prove anything. I mean, it wasn't like one of those guys. He wasn't collecting a crowd. As a matter of fact, he was running from the crowd. So just to honor him, I'll tell his brief story. He was born into, a normal household, pretty much. I mean, he lost his parents early. We'll look at that, things like that. I mean, some pretty traumatic things early. But he was raised by grandparents, went to school like everyone else, but couldn't concentrate. And they thought something was wrong with him. So this is that thing of the inverse quality. His intellect was not his strong suit. So everyone, of course, thought that he had a learning disability. And at that time in India, I don't think it was so PC. It wasn't politically correct like we are now. So I'm sure they said some crueler things, which I've read, but they really just thought he was hopeless in school. And what was strange is he met a saint at a certain age, another sant, a Sufi sant. And in meeting this sant, he was able to focus just enough to get through school, and he learned languages. He could learn languages for whatever reason. And then his grandparents put him into the army, of all things. Okay. Of course, he started going into samadhi. It was just this is an example of a naturally occurring. He wasn't trying, he wasn't doing anything for it. It must have been from the previous birth. And Revati is very empowered somehow by the most recent birth. I mean, you think of the 12th house, we often talk about the previous life being in the 12th house somehow. Even though it's our end in this life, it also becomes the seat of some of that. So he, long story short, he ends up being completely what they call God intoxicated, or a must. And the British are in India at this time. And he started collecting crowds, because miracles would happen around him. He didn't want it. He didn't like it. So he figured out to walk around naked. People would think he was insane. They would put him in an insane asylum at the time. And these were real bad places. These mental institutions at this time were really horrific places where they would do all kinds of things, even punish it's really not really a good place. But he would rather be there than have people follow him around. So he would take off his clothes and walk in front of the British. And of course, they think he's a madman and put him in the insane asylum or the mental institution. So he he couldn't really hide these occurrences. Like they would have the guys carry bricks at that time, the people in the institution. They'd be carrying bricks to, I guess, to put in some furnace. I as much as I follow. And the bricks, they'd just be floating over his head. He'd be carrying them, but they would also be, the guards they wouldn't know what they were seeing, because they were just like, it's like he was carrying it on his head, but they would notice there was a space, like it was levitating over his head. And so they just started thinking something was strange with this guy, so they kind of leave him alone. And then they noticed that he was getting out at will. Like he could unlock his door. He could just walk out the door and come back in, and it would be locked. So they didn't know how he was getting out. They couldn't figure it out. And eventually, one of the Maharajas in the area noticed his divine qualities and said, look, we know you're putting yourself in here because you don't want to be messed with, don't want to be dealing with these crowds. So you can stay. I'll give you a place to stay. And even then, he was a little unruly, with a lot of these mystics, they don't follow the religious rules. But so there's a lot of stories that evolve out of that. But Tajuddin Baba is his name, and you can look up more stories about him. Now his chart, just to show you guys, that's the, okay, you can still see the screen, correct?
Yes, we can, yeah.
You can see the chart?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So we're immediately seeing Shukra on the Lagna, guys. And so when I talk about Shukra being a big part of the mystics path, you're going to see this. You'll see Nicha Shukra. It's not about the Rashi it's in. It's not about this or that. It's just some very strong influence, okay? So don't get hung up on all these so-called strength rules. I don't think, and I say this with humility for all of us, I don't think we really understand what the rishis were saying. I'm not sure we have the capacity, guys. So we need to approach this with our heads down. Speaking of feet, we need to approach this with our heads down and not be so concrete that we really know what this is. It's a very divine thing that we're looking at. I'm just not so sure we're understanding it always. So bear with me. So if you see, he's born into Budh Dasha, right? Because he's Ashlesha moon, conjunct Ketu in the 8th. So for those of you who, worry about that being like a bad nakshatra and all of that, I mean, he definitely went through things, but once again, the supernatural ability in the amount of Shakti in these so-called dreadful nakshatras and poisonous places is tremendous. So please never look on it as bad. Throw that word out. Okay, so he's born naturally into Budh. Now, one technique, and I'm not making this up, Rishi Parashara says to look from the Dashapati. Okay, so at birth, everyone has their moon awake. Rishi Parashara is giving us a hint of how to use these dashapatis. Everyone has moon awake because you're born out of a mother or a womb. And it's your Janma Nakshatra. It's what you're subjected to. Birth, we're subjected to birth. You can't negotiate with your parents. You can't debate with them when you're a baby. Okay. Whatever they want to do to you, they can do. Okay. He's letting us know the reason moon is Janma, very much out of our reach, at least once we're born. Who knows what's happening before in the other state, but once we're born, our body is in our little being is very subjected to whatever our parents want to do. So everyone has moon awake at birth, from the first nourishment, the mother, all that stuff. So if you look, naturally, Mercury, Budh, wakes up the moon. So this tells you immediately 2 + 2. It shows you what these rishis were trying to illumine about the dashapatis. You're not born into moon dasha, not everyone's born into moon. So why am I going to look at the nakshatra only of the nakshatra of the moon? I'm going to look at the nakshatra of the moon because of the dashapati. That's the generative force. He wakes up the sleeping nakshatra, you could say. Okay, so Budh is, of course, in Shravan. So we're going to take Shravan, but that's not going to be the strongest influence. The strongest influence is going to be anyone sitting in Budh's nakshatra. Please, this is an important technique. Very simple, but it's actually important. This is why Rishi Parashara says to look at the 2nd and the 12th house from the Dashapati. He actually speaks about the placement of the grahas from the Dashapati, but all I ever hear people mention is the Lagna. And then and then the Rashis, overcompensating with Rashis. And I'm just trying to gently help because for those of you who are better researchers than me or that are more intelligent than me, maybe you'll take this and discover a deeper secret. So consider this. Don't throw it. You're not born in the Vimshotri, okay? You're not born into the Rashi Pati of your moon. You're not, it's not the Lord of the first. So why are we saying, oh, I'm in Mars Dasha and it rules my 3rd house? I'm just suggesting that we need to look at why he assigned the Dashapatis to the nakshatras and what happens in the time period, okay? Now, who else is Mercury going to wake up? If moon, look who else is sitting in a Mercury nakshatra, Mangal. So at birth, this man not only had moon with Ketu, right? He had moon, but Ketu's there. It's not the same nakshatra, but it's there. It's an influence. Moon woken up in Ashlesha, but he also had this Mangal in the 3rd woken up. So when moon and Mangal are awake at birth, what happens? In this case, and we're talking about Revati being the negotiation with life and death and hospitals and emergency rooms and all of this, and it's Mangal, right? So he almost didn't live in his birth. He wouldn't cry. And so they tortured him to make him cry. This is Mangal. This is nothing but Mangal awake at birth, especially in the third. Because for those of you who know Jyotish deeply, third house is a house of instruments, tools, and weapons. So he's third from the Dashapati, Budh, who's Mangal sitting in the nakshatra. He wakes up with the moon. Tajudan doesn't cry. He doesn't cry. And he gets tortured to cry, and it left the scars permanently on him. His mother and father die in an accident. Akala Mrityu. Who is Akala Mrityu Pati? Mangal? Anyone else? I'm just saying, guys, just take a look at this way, because Mangal is sitting in Revati. Okay, so this tells you more about that Revati being emergency rooms, especially if Mangal comes into Meena Rashi. I used to see this very, very commonly with emergency room workers. Very common. Mangal in Pisces, and Mangal in Revati very commonly as well, like Moon, Mangal conjunction in Revati, things like that, people working with emergencies. But this is that negotiation with life and death. And very fascinatingly, it's his amatya as well, if you want to use the Charakarkas. It's Ucha in the Navamsha, which for those of you who did attend the conference and hear, Mangal is a very big, important player in yogic attainment, you could say, the ability to go on that path, because it requires such streamlined concentration of energy. So of course he's born into a dasha where Mangal is imprinted somehow. And this is where those of you who have gone through trauma, please rest your heart here that very beautiful things can come out of trauma. Oh my God, Kapilji is with Togi, with Laddu Baba. He appeared when I said beauty. So, but very beautiful things can come out of trauma, just like those of you who have come back from death. Speaking of some people with us here, our dear Laddu Baba, actually. So those of you who have come back from death, yeah, shukran. But guys, I'm going to hand it over actually to our dear Laddu Baba. But, Laddu Baba, you can even talk about this, that, people who come back from these places, when they do want to come back, it's not because the experience was bad. It's because they had a purpose here, right? So anyway, he had an experience of that at birth. This is that classic Mangal, Revati, all of that stuff. So guys, I wanted to show you this. And for those of you who want to take a screenshot of events here and then look through the chart, I'm just going to leave that there for a minute. So anyone who wants to study this with the events, I do have it set to synodic year because that is astronomically linked with moon, not even astrologically. It's not because of my intuition. It's because astronomically it's linked with the movement of the moon, the lunar year. Okay, guys. So I'm just isolating this mechanically to being a lunar dasha. That's all I'm doing, because the Rashis are clearly solar. Okay, guys. So wanted to share that, and we'll hand off to Laddu Baba.
I know, Dr. Pai, you have to leave.
I'm leaving in another few minutes. I just wanted to probably add a few points. That was brilliant what Evji brought about. Now, this is my observation. I want the rest of you to look at this very, very key point, which came to my mind, and I wanted to share with you guys before Aditya starts. Okay, now, Revati is the nakshatra which is associated with Shukra Karma, because Shukra gets exalted there. Now, what you actually have to know, like what Evji said, that in the southern part of India, they say Revati is also associated with Ravana, is also called as Dashanath. Now, if you look at the Shukra Karmas that are there with any clan, which is Shukra is nothing but Bhargava curse. There is a curse of Bhargava. Bhargava is nothing but Bhrigu Rishi. Now, the first thing that I wanted to say to you is Bhargavas have a curse related to their eyes and their feet. Okay, now let me give you an example. Bhrigu Rishi, Evji already said, there was an eye of arrogance, which is what was in the feet with Vishnu removed. Then in another incarnation of Vishnu, which is Vamana Avatar, Shukra got his eyes punctured. So do you see there is a connection with eye in the feet and real eyes? Now you have to know there is a Tanmatra. Tanmatra, there is 5 Tanmatras. In the Tanmatras, Rupa, which means of light, that is affected with Shukra. So the Tanmatra, in the Tanmatra, the Jnanendriya, which you can see something is Rupa, light, is seen from the eyes. So that is affected. There's a curse there. Then the Karmendriya associated with the Rupa, light, is feet. So these two areas you will see Shukra karmas coming, which means there would be some problems there. Now, other thing I would say is Revati, because Shukra is connected to this, Shukra also has a karma related to, as we see, Bhrigu lost a part of his eyes in his feet, that is his arrogance. Shukra lost one of his eyes in the Vamana Avatar episode. Ravana is known to have given all his body parts in the fire so that he can appease Shiva. Jesus, I said, Revati, where he had to go through physical abuse, where he was crucified, and that is like the epitome of pain that a physical body can go through. Similar, like Ravana, who was chopping off each of his heads, removing the skin and throwing it into the fire. That is, called Kandamanda Yoga. That was his way of appeasing. That is the intense form of yoga that he was doing. So you can see all of this is something connected to some body part. Eyes, feet, and some body part being lost, which is connected to Revati. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say is this nakshatra is connected to Mridangam and Veena or Sitar. This is the remedy. If you see one of the greatest sitar players, which is Ravi Shankar, born in 1920, you go and look at his chart, you will see in his chart that he has ascendant and his sun is in Revati nakshatra. Right? Revati is connected to Veena. Shiva was a greatest Veena player, and his greatest devotee, Ravana, was one of the very greatest Veena player. Veena is a remedy. Veena or sitar is a remedy. Stringed instruments, especially like guitar, Veena, and sitar are great remedies for this. Then the last thing I wanted to say is it's connected to what is called as Mridangam. What is Mridangam? The word Sanskrit word Mrit, which means is clay, hardened clay. Angam means limb. And this form is, if you see, the favorite deities who like to play the Mridangam is Ganesha. Ganesha always likes to play the Mridangam, and the other person who, deity who loved to play the Mridangam, and Shiva did the Tandava, because she was talking about Ananda Tandava. Evji mentioned, she's got a image of Ananda Tandava. Who was doing the Mridangam then? It is Nandi Keshwara, who is his bull. So he was playing the Mridangam as Shiva was doing the Ananda Tandava. So Mridangam is called as a Deva Vadyam. Deva Vadyam means it is divine. So when you see any Tandava, you see Shiva places hand drum, Damru, and Nandi is playing his Mridangam. So these are the best remedies. So listening to music, instrumental music of Veena, stringed instruments, and Mridangam can help you in resolving some of the problems. Another thing I would lastly end this session by saying, the way that you can associate yourself with the Akash Tattva. Akash Tattva is associated with flowers. See, every Tattva, you have to see that there is, like for example, Prithvi Tattva is Gandha. Gandha means fragrance. Okay. Then we say Gandham Samarpayami. Then if you have Rupa, which is light, Tanmatra, Then you say Deepam Samarpayami, Pushpam Samarpayami for this. Okay, so you can offer flowers to pacify the influence of Akash Tattva. And the last thing I want to say, the bird which is associated with this, which was also with Lord Shri Krishna, was peacock, Mayura. Mayura can help you because Mayura is Akash Tattva. Okay, like Ganapati's Vahana is the mouse. Mouse is associated with Prithvi Tattva, and Subramanya, Murugan, Kartikeya, his Vahana is peacock. It's Akash Tattva. So Akash Tattva can be controlled by keeping a picture of Murugan with the peacock. And peacock is a great imagery that you can help with the Akash Tattva. Remember I said this nakshatra is associated with Akash. So anything that you want to heal with Akash, you can help with flowers. Making, giving flower-related remedies to deities, and again keeping a picture of a. Don't keep peacock feathers. Krishna used to keep it. I told you Krishna is associated. That is for the protection, but it is a national animal of India, and please do not try to, because then we will be really endangering this species. So please keep pictures of the elephant, pictures of if you can't keep the vadyam, which is veena, you can also keep Saraswati with veena as a picture in the house. That can help you to combat the challenges that are there with this Akash Tattva. Okay, so with that I have to scoot. I've been getting so many calls. I have to go somewhere and I'm already late, but it was brilliant. Thank you.
Dr. Paiji, just quickly, I think music in general, I think you just nailed, that's a very good thing to say, but seriously, Akash Tattva, that's all music.
Yes,
Akash
music, but
like ghazal, bhajans, I was just thinking also, like I have seen numerous Qawwali singers, because it involves poetry as well, kavi.
Yes.
So we can get anything that involves kavi and music, sangeet.
There are two things I want to say. In Carnatic music, vocal, the Carnatic music is incomplete without mridangam, and it's called ghatakam. Ghatakam is like they use literally a pot, a hardened clay pot, and they use that. It's called Daiva Vadyam. Daiva Vadyam means Shiva himself is impressed with that, listening to that, because he starts his cycle of creation and dissolution as well. So anybody, because this is the last nakshatra, it's called Antya as well. Today we talked about, you also said about seeing how many, serial killers are associated with this nakshatra. That is Antya. Antya means it's Yama. He's also called Antyaba. I want to liberate you. He wants to give you, release. So that is also the other side of this nakshatra. Anyway, but I wanted to share this with you. Shukra karmas. Please start looking at Shukra karmas in the chart, and you see Bhrigurishi, Shukra, then Ravana, Jesus Christ. All of these had some physical pain that they had to go through and suffering that they had to go through. Okay, and the same thing you see in the Shia sect as well. There is certain forms of Muslims who like to beat themselves. That is also kind of a Shukra karma they are trying to. They use weapons and blades to actually then, their back is actually being, shivered. And also you have seen with Murugan, people like piercings in their tongue and things like that. That is Shukra karma. They want Mars is used as a way, using weapons, blades, sharp objects. You are trying to combat your Shukra karmas by using Mangal as a way to combat that. Anyway, these are my points. I know there might be other opinions in the panelists, but I want to take your leave, and it was such a wonderful gathering. So thank you very much, everybody. Namaskar. Bye bye.
I think now it's Aditya. So Aditya, you can go ahead. I think you're on mute, Aditya.
Before that, Eveji, can you put that chart? Because wanted to say something, then Dr. Pai had to leave, I know. So
let me just get it again.
Yeah, you should be able to share screen now. Try now.
Yes, I'm just pulling up the chart. Okay, Tajuddin. Here he is. Where is my share screen? Oh, there it is. Okay. I will also share.
This is good for research. I thought maybe we can wanted to look into those. So here it was. It said moon is in Ashlesha. So moon is in Ashlesha. This was a chart you were saying the moon is in Ashlesha. So Mercury is the one planet from put it in the Lagna, and then you said a third is the Mars. Correct? That's what you were saying.
So it wakes it up. Just like
So
it
what?
wakes, everyone has moon awake at birth. The concept is
Correct.
giving us 2 + 2. He's just not saying it's 4. He's expecting you to know that every single one of us is born into the nakshatrapati of our moon. And sorry, the Shapati. There's only one nakshatrapati, that's Chandra.
Correct.
So then you the Shapati. So every single person is born into the Shapati of their moon, because moon has to be awake for all of us for Janma to happen. But then
So
as you
here
move dashas, we need to look at the
Correct.
same thing. Yeah.
So Mercury becomes the first dashapati of this person at birth. And then you were trying to say that because the third house has got Mars, so what was your point?
From
Which you
the
made?
Dashapati, that's tools, instruments, weapons, all of that. He
Okay.
would not cry as well. So it's very interesting when you get a combination of certain nakshatras, those people who are more silent, actually Monavrat and all of these things. He didn't say a lot. There's no discourses. There's no anything from him. He was just naturally occurring kind of miraculous things around him. And the things he did say were very simple, to the point. Everyone has this misconception of Rahu Mercury being, this. No,
Correct.
Rahu actually can make a very spiritual person. I really want to drive that home. If you look, this is very close to an eclipse.
Correct.
If
Yes.
it's not an eclipse, it's very close. So once again, we've got an eclipse birth. We've got 2 nakshatras of the Gandanta points. They're not exactly Gandanta points, but they are 2 nakshatras of Gandanta points. Okay, and that's important because there's a tremendous potential in those. Tremendous Shakti. So whenever I see things like this, like born on an eclipse and many grahas are involved, right? You've got Mercury pulled into it. And so, yeah, this would be the imprint of Janma, is the Dashapati, would be the imprint of your birth.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. What was?
Yeah, and like you can look at Ketu here. Let's go to the next Dasha. And so why?
Okay.
Okay, so what's happening with Ketu? When did he go into the army? I'm just going to make this bigger. Look at that. Mercury is waking up Mangal again. Ketu Mercury, he joins the army. I mean, it's just incredible. It's actually incredible if you go through this way. You're just gonna, there's no debate. Like, to me, it just seems like it flows. It's not like it's simple. It makes it more simple where you're not having to jump around the chart and say, this rules the third and this is, no, it's just very simple. He goes into the army. And if you notice as well, Shukra goes 6th, okay, from the Dashapati. It's very interesting to observe the house the moon goes into from the Dashapati, where the Lagna, also the Lagna, where the Lagna is going from the Dashapati. And Shukra is always union, okay? So any of the grahas from the Dashapati Shukra is always going to be a form of union. So he's got the Lagna and Shukra in the 6th from Dashapati, and he's got Mangal getting woken up at a certain point in that Dasha, and he goes into the army. It's just simple. It's just simple.
Yeah. This is a normal technique which we also use, any planetary analysis. Yeah, I also use that.
We should be using.
Yeah.
And so we can just look at Shukra real quick, which reinforces his chart from the Lagna, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so
it's interesting. In the events you mentioned, Venus, Mars was when he became must after the association with Sufi Sant. So Mars, so again getting activated, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Revati, he became drunk. See, Revati has to do with that divine wine, that music. He became, where do you get drunk as a saint is through the nod. There's actually a yoga shastra, nada bindu, and it's a drunk, I mean, look at it, it's in his heart. It's in the fourth house. It's in his side. And so everyone thinks Mars is this bad guy, but actually he concentrates all the energy. So see, there's nothing in a Mangal nakshatra. You notice that? So what happens is that the nakshatra that Mangal is in gets just wide, gets more activated. Not all the Mercury nakshatras, please don't make that mistake, but just because Mangal is sitting there, the other thing that will happen is the Chara Karaka will get activated. So Mangal is his amatya, his life purpose, what you people call career. You look at his Navamsha as well. It's Ucha in the fourth, in the house of the heart. So, I mean, this was a mystic saint, a sant. And he loved Quali. He loved music. He loved ghazals and things like that. There's a story about him with, it's not Begum Akhtar, but it's one of the famous ones where she's very prideful about her voice. And she comes in, she won't sing in front of him because she thinks he's like a beggar. He won't take care of his, little does she know that even the Maharaja bows to his feet. She didn't know that. I can't remember which one of these queens of ghazals it is, but it's Begum Akhtar, maybe. I maybe she was, I can't remember. Anyways, so she wouldn't sing in front of him. She wouldn't sing for him at first request, and he took her voice. Like on the spot. She couldn't sing. So there's a famous story about that, because when she comes and humbles herself in front of the fakir, right? The beggar who has the world at his feet, because he's discovered the internal, the treasure, the real treasure that no one can take from you. Right? He's discovered that immovable thing, that real wine, the wine that never wears off. You can drink whiskey, but this other wine, it's not compared. It can't compare it to wine, this wine of this earth, to that. So anyways, he takes her voice just to remind her. So she comes back and she sings for him. But anyway, he, very interesting thing with Mangal and the way people think of Mangal. But yeah, so Togiji, I mean, it's real clear. He got his life purpose. As soon as that Venus Mangal came into action, his Amatya, whatever his profession, he was known, and he became getting known. And then if you see his Ketu, okay, look, his Ketu's in the 8th. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. Ketu moon. Yeah.
It rules. Yeah, it's a very interesting planet to think about in his chart, Graha. Okay, but it's in Jupiter. It's in Guru Nakshatra. He's admitted to the mental asylums at that point when he enters the Shukra Ketu.
Oh, okay.
It's just fascinating. I'm saying to just study it, because that 8th house comes into play. His miraculous, he was known to have, like the Ashta Siddhis they talk about. Ashta Siddhis live in the 8th house, actually. So when we talk about Ashta Lakshmis, there's Ashta so many, right? There's so many of the Ashtas. Usually they're associated with Siddhi, attainment.
True.
That 8 is very, so you'll see if you go through, his fame grew in the Surya Rahu. Okay, so Surya Rahu, who's in a Surya Nakshatra? And it's in the first from the Dashapati. It's in the Kendra from the Dashapati, Rahu himself.
Correct.
Okay, so you see this? So Rahu is awake the whole Surya Dasha. Now, I do use the 8 Karaka system. I know many people do not, but it would be his Atma Karaka if you use that system, okay? If you use that system, and it's in the Kendra with Mangal, his Amatya, which is a major yoga, by the way, in the Navamsha. So it wakes up the Prithvi Tattva as well in the Navamsha, which has to do with your role on this earth. Your role in the material, it materializes. You'll see even like Paramahansa Ramakrishna has an Ucha Mangal in the Lagna. You've got to have some of that Bhumi. You've got to be able to affect Bhumi Mata. if you have work here, these kind of people have work here. They keep the body after liberation. So this Prithvi Tattva actually becomes really critical for that. It's interesting how often you will see this pattern with these guys, and how often you'll see Mangal heavily involved, which I think we're taking for granted is a very spiritual graha, because he is dharana. He is that concentrated energy. So you can just go through and see. So those of you who want to study this deeper, the moon Rahu, oddly, he gets released from the prison, he gets his release from that, the asylum, and he's taken to a palace. Okay. So moon wakes up sun and Mercury. I mean, just play with this, just look at it. That's what I would ask you to do. So in his moon dasha, it's interesting. His moon dasha is when he really starts getting recognized by the Maharaja and all of that. And he dies.
That's in seventh house too. So that makes the recognition.
Exactly.
Also sun
Well,
also.
the point is it's a Kendra. So when things are in a Kendra from the Dashapati, they're very powerful. So any of the Kendras can actually enhance that. So it's an interesting study for all of you who haven't studied the chart this way. And then he passes away. He drops his body right at the beginning of Rahu. Right at the beginning of Rahu, which oddly is a common thing with Atma Karka. Okay, because it's the planet you're said to have the most karma with. Okay, so when that planet's done with you and that graha is done with you, and most of these guys will tell you when they're going to die. And he was one of those. So he was like, yeah, my time's up. Some omen happened in front of him and he said that, my time's up. So it's the Shirdi Sai Baba too, the whole thing with the brick breaking. He used to sleep with a pillow. It was a brick. His pillow was a brick. And when it broke, that brick was me. This kind of odd speech, this abstract speech, but he died right after left his physical body, you could say. And where did he go? People do see him. So, and I'm not going to discount those people. It's a very real thing. So anyway, yeah. So please, guys, take a screenshot. Please check out the Karkas, experiment with it. Remember, I've got the synodic year here. You're welcome to put 365 days. I have my reasonings for it.
I think the synodic year is a 354 year. Is that right?
Yes, it's the astronomical lunar year. And I do have the Narayana or the Rashi Dasha set to 360 degrees. That's because, just a little logical thing, guys, you don't have to do it, but there's only 360 degrees in the chart that the sun travels. There's not 365. I don't know where that's overlapping. So you can answer that for yourself. But the sun makes a perfect circle according to the Rashi chart. I'm not talking the 365-day years. It is a very solid year. Mayasur and Surya Siddhanta knew of it, but he still utilized other years for certain things. Okay, so he wasn't only using this 365-day year. As a matter of fact, there's debate that was a tropical year. So if you don't research this stuff and actually try it out, please don't discredit it until you research it. And be willing to throw out things that don't work. Be willing to assume. Don't assume that you know. I think that's the important thing to do. Is just to kind of come in with a clean mind. It's clean. Whenever you're wanting to learn something, you have to just forget everything you think you know, right? So this is something to play with. It's something I encourage. It's funny we're speaking of dashas, which is another thing with timeline. Yeah. Call. Okay.
Okay, I will share my screen.
Let's see. Just give me a minute here. Okay. Wait. Yeah, you should be able to share your screen now, Aditya. Go ahead.
Oh my God, I have many things to talk. It will be another Bollywood movie, I guess, today.
I think we are already at that point now. Yeah.
Timelessness. Maybe we're all somehow coming together under Revati.
Yeah. Happy post-Thanksgiving Day, How was Thanksgiving for everyone? You all good?
Yeah, food, right? A lot of food, right?
I don't
Lot of
really
food.
celebrate it, guys.
I'm still digesting my
No turkey
food.
for you, yeah.
Okay, so Revati, as Dr. Pai ji, Kapil ji, everyone mentioned, I hope my sound is clear. Is it?
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you. Yeah.
So the natural 12th house of the Kalpurush chart, of course, all the padas are in Pisces. So of course, the thing when it is in Pisces, 12th house will be prominent. 12th house teams will be, you all know by now, I think everyone is expert. Moksha, meditation, spirituality, and also note the opposite is a 6th house. So 6th house karmas can also be coming up. What is the symbol? Pair of fish going in the opposite direction and Damru. People were saying. So with these symbols, now I think you should start studying astrology by symbols, pair of fish going in opposite direction, Damru. So that's all. That should give you at least 10 things to know and understand. So pair of fish, opposite direction, that means there will be something in thoughts going in opposite direction. So maybe what you have to learn to focus, concentrate. Lack of concentration can be possible. That is, and I will tell you a lot of stories about fishes and all, how this is connected as we go further. The other thing is Damru. Damru is what? A musical instrument. I think Dr. Pai was mentioning about how important is the Damru and how important was Veena and Sitar and all those instruments, and Shiva was dancing with Damru. So somehow maybe this nakshatra is connected with some instrument playing, just as with Shravana nakshatra. That's also one nakshatra which is closely associated with the playing of instruments. This nakshatra also is related to that. So maybe if you have problems or people who are into this Revati nakshatra, uh, if if they want to energize themselves, listening to some music or playing some music can be a theme in itself. So that's why I said when you see those things, try to make your own points, and that's how you learn Jyotish.
Yogi,
I
just
feel
quickly with the Damru, it's very much like our heart. How many hearts we
exactly.
have,
Yes,
measuring the
yes,
lifespan. And you think of
yeah,
Tal and
yeah.
Kal.
Tal and Kal.
Literally,
It
so Mahadeva, like even this Moksha Tandav, he's holding one hand, he's standing with one hand, but he's got the Damru still in the other. So all the
correct.
forms of Lord Shiva, they always have this in these Tandavs.
Correct. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I feel as a physicist, I feel that it's the time shape, the cone, the light cone. Always feel that
It
as a
does look
relativist
like
physicist,
that,
that looks
actually.
like that. Yeah.
It does look like that's
Exactly.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe going from one realm to the other, and which Pushan does. We'll come to that too. It has got its own meaning. So talking about some astronomical facts, I think I always like astronomy. Here is this Pisces constellation. This is all the Pisces constellation. So you can see one head of the fish here, and the other fish is going in this direction. So one fish is going in this direction, the other fish is going in this direction, something like that. And this is a Yogatara of Revati. This star is a Yogatara of Revati. Zeta